Is Mary perfect? What was her life like? This is a very good question. Very, very good. I do want to say at the beginning, Mary herself was not perfect. She was sinless. And I want to make this distinction because I love the Blessed Mother. She's awesome. She's my mother. And so I want to say that she has all of the virtues. She was probably the best human person to ever live. However, she wasn't perfect. She wasn't a robot, so to speak. She did not sin, but she also would have had to learn how to speak. She might have made mistakes on her shopping list. She might have made a wrong turn when she was going somewhere. Just because she was immaculate, that she did not have the stain of sin, doesn't mean that she didn't make mistakes. It just meant that she was always following the will of God, that she never did anything contrary to the will of God. And so perhaps a useful way of thinking about this is if Mary were to play chess, because I love chess, so let's use this as an example. If Mary were to play chess, she'd have to learn how all of the pieces moved. She would have to learn the various strategies. And so she would make many mistakes. She would make many blunders. However, when she lost or when she won, she would do so with humility, with kindness, and probably most importantly, with joy. Because though she might make mistakes on the board, she wasn't sinning. She wouldn't sin. And that's kind of what Mary would have been like. She would have lived a life in tune with the Holy Spirit. Now, what would that have looked like? Well, one thing that I would assume would be the case would be that Mary wouldn't have been distracted by sins. I know for myself and from other people that I've spoken with, oftentimes we can get into these sort of conversations in our heads in which where we tell people off in our minds, or we go and gossip about people, or we have these sort of self-conscious dialogues in which we're focused in on what do people think about me and all this. Mary wouldn't have had any of that. She would have been perfectly humble. She wouldn't have had to worry about whether or not people loved her because she knew God loved her. She wouldn't have been thinking about the sins of others because she didn't need to dwell on that. She wasn't constantly comparing herself with that. She would be very meek, very joyful, very humble. C.S. Lewis, in one of his books, I believe was The Problem of Pain, speaks about, like, if you were to meet a person who was without sin, you probably wouldn't notice much about them other than they took a very serious interest in you and that they were filled with joy. That would be my guess if you were to meet Mary, that she would be very concerned about you because she wouldn't be focusing in on herself all the time. She was completely humble. She wasn't focusing on pride and ego. She'd be focused in on you. And she would be filled with joy because she would have the joy of the Spirit. And so that would be my guess about Mary. First, no, she was not perfect. She wasn't omniscient. She was human just like any of us, but she was without sin. And so being without sin, she wouldn't be distracted by the things so many of us are distracted with. And she would have been able to live that spirit of humility and that spirit of joy.